The Soviet gunner could see the German tank clearly through his sight. The distance was not ideal, but it was good enough. The target sat partially exposed beyond a line of trees near the edge of a frozen field.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
For several tense seconds, nothing moved. The gunner steadied himself, adjusted his aim, and prepared to fire. Around him, the crew of the Soviet T-34 felt something rare on the Eastern Front. They felt confident. Then the German tank vanished. Not destroyed. Not hidden by smoke. Not swallowed by an explosion. It simply disappeared. And in the next hour, that disappearance would pull an entire Soviet tank platoon into one of the most dangerous games of cat and mouse imaginable. February 18, 1944, near the Korsun Pocket in central Ukraine. The winter offensive was reaching a critical stage. Soviet forces were pushing hard against German formations trapped inside a shrinking pocket. Snow covered the ground. The air was cold enough to sting exposed skin within minutes. Engines struggled. Men survived on little sleep. Yet despite the conditions, the Red Army continued advancing. Among the advancing forces was a T-34-76 commanded by Junior Lieutenant Ivan Mikhailovich Sokolov, a 24-year-old officer who had already survived battles that many older men had not. His crew consisted of driver Nikolai Petrov, loader Sergei Antonov, radio operator Alexei Volkov, and gunner Viktor Belov. Belov had earned a reputation inside the unit. He was calm under pressure and rarely wasted ammunition. On more than one occasion, his accurate fire had saved Soviet infantry from German counterattacks. That morning, shortly after 8:30 a.m., his crew received orders to move toward a wooded sector where German armored elements had reportedly been seen withdrawing. The mission sounded simple. Advance, locate enemy armor, destroy it. The T-34 moved across frozen ground, its tracks grinding through patches of snow and ice. Other Soviet tanks advanced nearby. The weather was relatively clear compared to previous days. Visibility stretched across open farmland broken only by tree lines, abandoned villages, and shallow ridges. At first, everything appeared normal. Then, Belov spotted movement. A German tank. He immediately informed Sokolov. The target appeared near a stand of trees roughly 1 kilometer away. Belov studied it through his optics. The shape looked familiar. Wide tracks. Large turret. Heavy profile. Possibly a Panther. The Panther was one of Germany's most dangerous tanks. Its armor and powerful 75 mm gun had earned respect throughout the Eastern Front. Yet this Panther seemed exposed, almost careless. It sat partially visible beyond the trees. Belov felt the advantage belonged to him. He adjusted the sight, waited, tracked the target. And just as he prepared to fire, the Panther disappeared. Not slowly, not gradually. Instantly, one moment it was there. The next moment it was gone. Belov blinked. He checked his sight. Nothing. The open area beyond the trees was empty. No smoke, no dust, no movement, no sign of retreat. The German tank had simply vanished. At first, nobody inside the T-34 understood what had happened. Sokolov ordered the tank forward. Perhaps the Panther had reversed behind cover. Perhaps it had moved into a depression hidden from view. Perhaps Belov had mistaken what he saw. But Belov knew what he had seen. The Panther had been there. And now it was not. The Soviet tank continued advancing. Minutes passed. The crew remained alert. The radio crackled with reports from nearby tanks. No enemy contact. No gunfire. No movement. The area seemed strangely quiet. Too quiet. Experienced soldiers often feared silence more than noise. Noise meant the enemy had revealed himself. Silence meant he had not. As the T-34 approached the tree line, Belov searched every shadow, every bush, every gap between trees. Nothing. The German tank remained missing. Then came the first twist. A Soviet tank approximately 500 meters to their left suddenly reported enemy fire. The transmission arrived broken and frantic. A shell had struck one of the platoon's vehicles. Nobody knew from where. The impact had come without warning. Observers searched for muzzle flashes. Nothing. No German tank could be seen. Yet one Soviet vehicle was already burning. The situation made no sense. German armor could not fire invisible shells. Somewhere nearby, an enemy gun had line of sight. But where? The Soviet platoon halted and began scanning the area. Belov searched through his optics again. Nothing. Snow-covered fields stretched outward in every direction. The enemy remained hidden. Another minute passed. Then a second Soviet tank was hit. This time the shell struck the turret. The explosion echoed across the frozen countryside. The damaged vehicle stopped moving immediately. Smoke poured into the air. Again, nobody saw the shooter. Fear began spreading through the formation. Not panic, not yet, but uncertainty. The most dangerous feeling a tank crew could experience, because uncertainty destroys confidence, and confidence keeps men alive. Sokolov ordered his crew toward a shallow rise overlooking the battlefield. From there, they hoped to locate the hidden threat. The T-34 climbed the slope. Belov scanned continuously. Then something caught his attention. A flash. Very brief, almost invisible. Near another cluster of trees. Belov immediately focused on the area. For less than 2 seconds, he saw the Panther again, then it disappeared a second time. Now he knew he was not imagining things. The German tank was deliberately exposing itself only for moments before vanishing. The question was why. Sokolov considered the possibilities. A concealed firing position. Careful movement between terrain features. Perhaps even multiple Panthers operating together. But none of those explanations fully fit what they were seeing. The battlefield felt wrong, like a puzzle missing important pieces. The Soviet platoon continued searching. Another 20 minutes passed. The enemy remained largely invisible, yet German shells continued appearing. One Soviet tank lost its track. Another suffered damage to external equipment. Each attack came from an uncertain direction. The hidden enemy controlled the tempo. The Soviets were reacting, not leading. Then came the second twist. A reconnaissance team moving along the flank reported unusual terrain. From a distance, the area appeared flat. In reality, it contained a network of shallow ravines and depressions carved by water and seasonal erosion. Snow had concealed much of their shape. From ground level, tanks could disappear completely within them. Suddenly, part of the mystery became clear. The Panther had not vanished. It had dropped into terrain invisible from Soviet positions. But that explanation raised an even more troubling question. If the Panther was using the ravines, where was it now? The answer arrived moments later. A German shell slammed into the ground beside Sokolov's T-34. Snow exploded across the vehicle. The impact shook everyone inside. Belov immediately searched for the shooter. Nothing, again nothing, the enemy remained hidden. Yet now the German gun clearly had them in sight. The hunter was becoming the hunted. Sokolov ordered evasive movement. The T-34 accelerated. Tracks through snow behind them. The crew knew they were under observation. Somewhere beyond the ridges and ravines, German eyes followed every move. Belov felt the pressure growing. Earlier that morning he believed he controlled the situation. Now he realized something frightening. The Panther commander might have been controlling events from the very beginning. The Soviet platoon regrouped. Maps were studied. Reports compared. Observations shared. Gradually, a picture emerged. The German tank was using terrain with exceptional skill. It appeared briefly. Fired, disappeared, relocated, repeated. Each movement created uncertainty. Each disappearance forced Soviet crews to waste time searching. And every minute spent searching increased German survival. The battlefield had become a chessboard. The Panther commander was thinking several moves ahead. For the next hour, the contest continued. Soviet tanks advanced cautiously. German fire appeared unexpectedly. Snow, terrain, and distance combined to create constant confusion. Then a breakthrough finally came. A Soviet observer positioned in an elevated church tower several kilometers away reported something important. The Panther was not alone. Another vehicle had been spotted moving through the same ravine system. A second Panther. Suddenly, everything changed. The disappearances, the shifting firing positions, the confusing shell impacts, the contradictory reports. There had never been one Panther. There were two. One revealed itself, the other maneuvered unseen. When Soviet crews focused on one threat, the second Panther repositioned. When attention shifted, roles changed. The Germans were conducting a coordinated deception, and that realization transformed the entire battle. The invisible enemy was no longer invisible. Now the Soviets understood the pattern. Understanding creates opportunity. Sokolov immediately developed a plan with neighboring crews. Instead of chasing every sighting, they would force the Panthers into predictable positions. The Soviet tanks spread out. Fields of fire overlapped. Observers monitored likely escape routes. Patience replaced haste. For the first time that day, the Germans faced opponents who understood the game. The next contact came shortly before noon. One Panther appeared near the edge of a wooded area. Just as before, it exposed itself briefly, then began withdrawing. But this time the Soviets did not pursue immediately. They anticipated the maneuver, and as the Panther moved toward a ravine, another Soviet tank already had the route covered. A shell struck near the German vehicle, not a direct hit, but close enough to force a reaction. The Panther changed direction. That reaction exposed it to yet another Soviet position. Now the trap began closing. The German commander suddenly found himself under pressure, the same pressure he had imposed on others all morning. Belov tracked the target carefully. The Panther appeared for only seconds at a time. But now those seconds were enough. He adjusted the sight, measured the lead, controlled his breathing. The moment he had waited for all day finally arrived. The German tank emerged from cover. Not fully, just enough. Belov fired. The T-34's gun recoiled violently. The shell crossed the snowy battlefield. For a second, nobody knew the result. Then impact. The round struck near the Panther's side. The German tank disappeared again. But this time the disappearance looked different. Smoke followed, dark smoke. The kind crews dreaded, the kind crews remembered. The Soviet tankers waited. Moments later, movement stopped. The Panther remained hidden behind terrain. Yet it never reappeared. Whether destroyed, abandoned, or disabled, its role in the battle was finished. But the second Panther remained active. And it had learned something important. The Soviets now understood the deception. The final phase of the battle began. Throughout the afternoon, Soviet forces pressed forward. The remaining Panther fought skillfully. It continued exploiting terrain, continued relocating, continued delaying the advance. But one tank against multiple coordinated opponents faced difficult odds. The balance was shifting. By late afternoon, Soviet units gained control of key high ground overlooking portions of the ravine network. That advantage reduced the German commander's freedom to maneuver. His hiding places became fewer, his routes more predictable, his options narrower. Then came the final confrontation. At approximately 4:15 p.m., observers identified the 2nd Panther attempting to move between concealed positions. The route exposed it briefly. Only briefly, but long enough. Several Soviet tanks engaged simultaneously. Shells crossed the battlefield from different directions. One missed. Another struck nearby. A third found its mark. The Panther halted. Smoke rose into the cold air. The duel that had dominated the day was over. As darkness approached, Soviet crews cautiously advanced through the area. The battlefield finally revealed its secrets. The ravines were deeper than many had imagined. Their shapes created natural concealment from numerous angles. A skilled crew could disappear completely, move unseen, then reappear where least expected. Combined with disciplined coordination, the terrain had become a force multiplier. The German tankers understood that, and for several hours they used it brilliantly. Later analysis suggested that the Panthers likely belonged to experienced units withdrawing under pressure from advancing Soviet forces. Their mission was not necessarily to destroy every Soviet tank they encountered. Their mission was to slow the advance, create confusion, and buy time. In that objective, they succeeded. A handful of tanks had delayed a larger force for much of the day. Yet the story also revealed something equally important. Adaptation wins battles. The Soviet crews began the engagement confused and reactive. They ended it organized and proactive. They learned, adjusted, and ultimately overcame the deception. Years later, veterans would remember many things about the war. The noise, the cold, the fear, the exhaustion, but some memories stayed sharper than others. For Viktor Belov, one memory remained unforgettable. Not the firing, not the victory, not even the destroyed Panthers. What he remembered most was the moment the enemy vanished, because that moment changed everything. It transformed certainty into doubt, advantage into danger, hunter into hunted. And it reminded every man on that battlefield of a brutal truth about armored warfare. Seeing the enemy does not mean understanding the enemy. A target can be visible and still be dangerous. A battlefield can appear simple while hiding deadly complexity. And sometimes the most dangerous opponent is not the one charging forward. It is the one patient enough to disappear. On that frozen day near the Korsun Pocket, a Soviet gunner believed he held the advantage. Through his sight, victory seemed only seconds away. The enemy was exposed. The shot was possible. The outcome appeared certain. Then, the German tank vanished. For a few moments, it seemed impossible. By the end of the day, it had become unforgettable. Because long after the smoke cleared and the engines fell silent, one lesson remained standing above the snow-covered battlefield. In war, the enemy you cannot see is often the enemy you should fear the most.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.